This is your government video for the First Amendment's Establishment Clause in the Freedom of Religion. So I want you to take a second here and read the First Amendment to the Constitution. You'll notice the underlined section here. Those two clauses are part of your freedom of religion. So in this video, we're going to talk specifically about the first part, which says that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. This establishment clause is generally meant to say that government cannot establish an official religion. And that's pretty clear. Obviously, we don't want a Church of England situation or anybody in the government requiring you to be a part of a specific church or religious sect of some sort. But establishment is more than that. What happens if our government is very friendly with certain religions and not others? What if our government gives tax breaks to some religions and not others? Where is the establishment line? So establishment comes up in kind of two ways. You have a freedom of religion. You can be whatever religion you want, but do you also have a freedom from religion? So what if you want to be atheist and you do not want to be around religious, people? Do you have the right when in let's say a government building, not to be bombarded by religious imagery, as an example? So there is, of course, you've probably heard this wall of separation between church and state, and they obviously wanted to have everybody allowed to have a religion. They made it not only part of the Bill of Rights, but they made it the very first part of the Bill of Rights. But where is that line drawn? How much is too much? So what if the government favors all religions over all people who choose not to be religious? Is that fair? What if, the government gives tax breaks to some religious organizations but not others? One of your Supreme Court cases that we went over is Engel versus Vitale from 1962, and this banned prayer in public schools. Prayer, of course, that was conducted and condoned and therefore required by public schools is banned. So you cannot forcibly do a morning prayer over the announcements, but students are allowed to pray on their own if they want. Students are allowed to engage in religious clubs, let's say, and they, of course, can ask a teacher moderator to be a part of that. Public schools can also teach elective courses on, let's say, world religions or philosophy and things of that sort, but it cannot be required or forced upon students who choose not to. Here are some other establishment decisions. You don't need to particularly know which case these came from, but just to give you a picture of where the Supreme Court draws this line. They have said that churches as nonprofit organizations who do a lot of good nonprofit work are tax exempt. So churches do not have to pay taxes on their incomes, and they do not have to pay taxes on their property. So most, religious organizations, again, do a lot of charitable work, but you also have some churches, let's say, televangelists, people who do really big ministries on television, who have large plots of land and they own massive houses and planes and things of that sort. Christmas displays are often put on in public and on public grounds and government grounds. The White House, for example, has a national Christmas tree that's lit up every single year. The Supreme Court has said that Christmas displays in town squares or on public property is okay, as long as it's what they consider secular components of religion. So the Supreme Court does not consider Santa or wreaths, reindeers, things like that to be religious. Putting a baby Jesus in the manger would be a religious component of the Christmas holiday. But because so many people who are not truly religious or Christian now celebrate Christmas, they now know that there are some, I would say, traditions that we do during Christmas that are also done by secular people. They've also said that state aid to religious schools is okay. So if the government is giving tax breaks or allowing, let's say, government grant money to go to schools, that's all right, even if that school happens to be religious, like Brophy. But the money that's coming from the government cannot be used for anything religious. So it can go to textbooks, assuming they're not religion classes. It can go to school lunch programs. It can transport students to the school. And it can also go for things like our scholarship fund. You can take tax exempt money and use it for tuition. So a student who is disadvantaged would be able to go to a better school. Government money, however, cannot go to field trips. It can't pay for teachers' salaries, can't pay for counseling or services because people can be religious. So we don't want government money to be intertangled with the church and state issue. So Brophy's scholarship program comes from a Supreme Court decision, which says that government tax dollars, we call this in Arizona a tax credit, can be used for scholarships. And Brophy uses 100% of their tax credit money to send students who would otherwise not be able to afford Brophy to send them to a school like Brophy, even though it happens to be religious. And this money also would be money that I paid for in my taxes, but I'm diverting it to something that I think is important.